Hey guys, this is gonna be the video about the 10 strongest runes for competitive play on 7.22, as you can see right. No, there. That's how that works. 7.23 just came out, as you probably all know, which kind of messes with my planning a bit, but still, the changes to these runes are really small. There's only one rune on the top 10 that really got affected by this, and I'll get to that by the time we get to that rune. Before I'll jump into this, I want to give a quick introduction to myself, just so you know, like, why should I trust this guy? I've been casting League of Legends for about the last 5 years. I've also been coaching some teams in the Nordic scene, including some teams in Challenger, and this summer I was on the EU LCS analyst desk. I also want to give a shout out to Raven, who's a coach and analyst in the European scene, and who's been helping me out with this top 10 to sort out like what are the strong runes and talk to me about like why they're good and so forth. So this list is also going to be mostly my own opinion, but also something about what the pros are doing. And of course, my own opinion is building a lot on what the best players in the game are playing with. We won't be jumping into the top 10 immediately. First, I want to go over some honorable mentions, and there's going to be 2 of them, and they're here in the resolve tree. They're called Iron Skin and Mirror Shell. 5 magic resist or 5 armor. The second part of the effect, like, it's not really that important, so it's basically 5 armor or 5 MR, which is absolutely huge in some scenarios. Like, you used to be able to pick up 9 armor off the seals in the old rune system. Now that you can't do that anymore, getting 5 armor or 5 magic resist in some lanes is very good. Like, if you're Sona level 1, being able to get plus 5 armor is so big for your tankiness if you're up against like an AD, a support that deals AD damage and an AD carry like in the bottom lane. That's really big. Also 5 MR can be really good in certain lane matchups, for example in mid or top lane. So these 2 runes, they're not too sexy, they're never too great, but they're consistently good if you're able to pick them up in the right matchup. So not strong enough for the top 10, but strong enough to be in the honorable mentions. With that out of the way, let's jump into the precision tree for number 10. And there it is, Coup De Grace comes in at number 10. I did not only put it in here to show off my pronunciation of Coup De Grace. Sexy, right? But it's like when you're judging runes, it's somewhat hard to compare them sometimes. Like, what's the best? A situationally very strong rune or a consistently strong rune? I would value them about the same, and I think Coup De Grace is a great example of a consistently strong rune. This is never super good in any given situation, but it's just consistently good a lot of the time. If you don't know what to pick, precision as a secondary tree is never going to be bad with Coup De Grace and with, I think, what's number 5 on my list. So just wait for that one, and you'll get to see what's a good secondary tree with Coup De Grace. But seriously, like, if you don't know what to pick up, Coup De Grace is really good if you're on a damage dealer. It's probably the best on like diving champions, I don't know, a Rengar, Kha'Zix, Katarina, Fizz. But just like generally on an AD carry or like a backline mage, this is really good as well. So definitely check out Coup De Grace for my number 10. Moving on to number 9, we're going into the resolve tree, and I think it's here on strength. There it is, Demolish at number 9. If Coup De Grace was consistently strong, Demolish is situationally very strong. In a certain situation where you're playing a resolve primary top lane like tank or a bruiser, and you're winning your lane, you're pushing in your opponent, you're forcing him to recall, Demolish is super good. If you're like going even or lose or even like losing slightly top lane, it's also kind of good. So I would still recommend you picking it up in those scenarios. Like sort of a long cooldown on 4 to 5 seconds hurts this a bit. You're not able to proc this on every minion wave, you're able to proc it on about every other minion wave, which is one of the big weaknesses of the rune. Like, you're not able to just poke in and out of the tower all the time. You have to actually wait the 4 to 5 seconds to get it in. But if you're in a winning lane, you can force back your opponent. You can go up to the tower, hit it for 4 seconds, then get this big extra bonus damage, hit with Demolish, and then recall. Like, that's a pretty big advantage. And if you're able to get an early tower in one of the solo lanes, specifically the top lanes we're talking about right now, that can be a lot of global gold a lot of map control. Especially now with Rift Herald in the game, top lane map control becomes even more important. The damage is at around 400 level 1 and scales up to about 1200 by level 18. This is assuming that you're a Resolve primary and that you've started with a Doran's Shield, so you have a lot of HP level 1. So I think it's really good on these like top lane Resolve tanks. It's not that good on someone like a Caitlyn. I've been seeing some like speculation on this, like, oh, is Demolish good on a tower pusher like Caitlyn? And I'm pretty sure it's not. Firstly, you have to stay in tower range for 4 seconds. What Caitlyn usually wants to do is to poke into the tower, get an auto attack, back off, back in, like go in, back out, etc., just back and forth. That's not how Demolish works. You have to stay in the tower range for 4 seconds. And you also have to stay within 600 range, and Caitlyn's auto attack range is 650. So you have to get close up and personal to the tower, stay there for a while, and then you get the bonus damage. And when you get the bonus damage, it scales very, very well with your max HP, but the base damage isn't that even that good for a Caitlyn, so not worth it in that scenario. I think this might be a tech choice on certain supports, so if you're a Resolve primary, or maybe even a secondary, as a support champion, I think Demolish can be worth it if you're winning the lane, if you know you're going to be able to proc it. But if it's just an even lane, or you don't know if you'll be getting gank assists and whatnot, I don't think Demolish is strong enough to be picked up on a support, especially since it's competing with Font of Life, which is strong in a lot of these Resolve primary supports. So that's number 9 on the list. Let's move on to number 8, and we're staying in the Resolve tree, and we're going for our first keystone, Grasp of the Undying. Comes in at number 8. This makes many top laners really, really happy. And if you've been in the game for a while, you know Grasp of the Undying. It's basically what it was in Season 7, except for the max HP, which is actually quite important. So doing the math on this, if you're able to proc it a lot, say you're able to proc it 4 times per minute, that's quite high, you're going to get 400 HP by 20 minutes. That's more than a Giant's Belt. So that's a large amount of extra HP. That is counting on you being able to trade a lot with Grasp though, which isn't always the case. So counting on you proccing it once a minute, that's 100 HP by 20 minutes, which doesn't sound as good. And by 20 minutes you really want a lot of HP still. That's more of the icing on the cake, the max HP. The extra magic damage, scaling with max health, and the heal is what really makes this good early on in the lane. Good damage, good sustain, makes a lot of these top lane tanks happy. What it doesn't do well is, though, for some champions, is that it forces you to trade in like a different way. So say this is a strong keystone on Ornn, it's the standard one on Ornn. What he wants to do in a lot of lane matchup is just to use his W, get the W procs down, get one auto attack to proc the brittle, and then get out. What Grasp forces you to do is to stay in there for another like 2 seconds, to have to proc it, which isn't always what you want to do in a lot of matchups. Still, it's strong with Ornn. I'm not saying you shouldn't go this on Ornn, but it forces you to trade in a way that you maybe would not do otherwise, which is the weakness of the rune. It's also, like, if you know you're up against a Grasp opponent in the top lane, you can sometimes abuse them with you knowing how they want to trade with their Grasp, which is why it's not higher up in this top 10. So let's move on to number 7 on the list, which is found in the Domination tree. And it's right here, Sudden Impact. After exiting stealth or using a dash, leap, blink, or teleport, dealing any damage grants you lethality and magic pen for 5 seconds, and you can see there the cooldown is 4 seconds. So if you're able to proc this a lot, like if you have several dashes or stealths and you can use this consistently, you can pretty much gain 10 lethality and 8 magic pen permanently in a fight, which is very, very good. It's good on champions that can proc it on its cooldown, obviously, so Kalista is the big one. Every single jump with the Kalista passive will proc this. Another champion is Riven, where every instance of her Q will proc this, as well as her E. It's also good on champion that's just like wants lethality or wants magic penetration. So if you're playing an AD assassin, you're playing Talon, you're playing Zed, you're playing Yasuo, you just like want the lethality, and then it's a good rune because all of them have these sort of dashes or stealths. So just a very, like, the stats aren't awesome. It's 10 lethality and 8 medic penetration. It's not too much, but being able to get it so consistently both in lane and in team fights make this a very strong rune. I also want to make a quick shout out to someone who you might not think as a user of sudden impact is my girl, Elise, who is able to practice with her spider form Q, and it's able to ramp up her spiderling damage by a lot. Like, the lethality and magic penetration both boost the damage of her spiderlings, which makes sudden impact a very good choice on her in my opinion. You used to run hybrid pen on Elise, and this basically gives you hybrid penetration. So sudden impact number 7, let's move on to number 6, and then we're going back into Resolve. So a lot of Resolve stuff so far, seeing that they are pretty good runes. And it's another keystone, it's called Aftershock. There it is. So after immobilizing an enemy champion, you gain 20 armor and MR, plus 30%. That's so much! 20 MR that also scales with your MR and armor. Like, you're taking a trade level 1, if you have some sort of a way to immobilize an enemy champion, you're gonna get 20 armor and magic resist level 1. Like, that's awesome! And I haven't even gotten to the damage part yet. You also deal a decent amount of damage that scales with your max HP. The cooldown is somewhat long, it's 20 seconds compared to Grasp, which doesn't have a cooldown, it's just like every 4 seconds. So after Shock you really wanna trade, wait for its cooldown, and then go in for a trade again. But the cooldown is really the big drawback. Other than that, this is strong. Like, the max HP also makes the damage relevant later on. So if, like, Maokai or someone with a lot of tanky stats jumps on you, he will actually do a bunch of damage with Aftershock. And the resistances are really strong early on in the lane, but the percentage scaling, like, that's really good as well. So definitely keep an eye out for Aftershock, a very strong rune, both early on in the lane and later on. It can be played around though, because you know there's going to be a 20-second cooldown, so the enemy, Maokai, is going to be the example again, goes in and takes a trade, procs the Aftershock, gets a good trade, then you know you'll have like 18 seconds after the trade where you can do whatever you want with him because he doesn't have Aftershock. So you can play around it, but it's a very strong rune, which is why it's at number 6 here. One of the strongest keystones in my opinion. Alright, so number 5 we'll find in the precision tree, and we go to Heroism and Triumph. Takedowns, which is kills or assists, restores 15% of your missing health and grants an additional 25 gold. The gold is pretty much icing on the cake, but it should give you a couple of 100 gold in a longer game, especially if we're talking about solo queue. If we're talking about competitive, the number of kills tends to be a little lower, so Triumph won't be as good there, but I still think it's a very solid choice because the gold is not the important part. Missing health can be like, I think Triumph goes really well with Coup De Grace. I was talking with on number 10. These two together are consistently strong. This is what I was hinting at back then, obviously. So if you don't know what to take as a secondary tree, Triumph plus Coup De Grace, consistently very strong, or consistently strong at least. You're never going to be in a bad spot if you pick these two. The fact that it's missing HP also, makes it stronger on someone who likes to dive in and take damage and like fight the enemy straight up rather than just assassinating them. So like the bruisery or tanky type of champions can really use Triumph well. But just in general, if you're an AD carry, if you're like a backline mage, even if you're an assassin, Triumph is going to do a lot of good stuff for you, which is why it's this high up on the list. It never does something super good for you, but it almost always does something good for you. So consistently strong in Triumph. Not that great in competitive, perhaps, when the amount of kills are lower, and not great in the sort of like small, quick skirmishes where someone just gets picked off and then both teams back off. But really good in these longer fights where you're able to proc the missing health restored several times. It's also instant, which is really, really good as well. If it was like regenerate 15% of your missing health over 5 seconds, that wouldn't be as strong at all, but getting it like as soon as you pick up the kill or the assist makes it really good. So I'll be moving on to number 4 in just a second. Just need to drink some water there, and let's go to sorcery. Let's go down to excellence here, because celerity is number 4 on the list. You might be surprised seeing it this high up, just looking at the stats. 4% increased movement speed, and then a bit of extra AP or AD. Might not sound that great at first, but let's compare it to the old runes for a second. This means that you're running, like if you have celerity, it means you're running around with 3 movement speed quints. I'll say that again. You're running around with 3 movement speed quints. Holy moly, that is so good! The obvious thing that you think about is like the roamers. If you're playing Alistar support or Aurelion Sol mid and just want to go all around the map and gank, like then you want the movement speed. And yeah, sure, it's good if you're playing those champions. But it's also really good on like a lot of laners. If you're like just playing 2 skill shot reliant champions in the mid lane, having 3 move speed quints from level 1 gives you such a big advantage in dodging out on the skill shots. If you're playing an AD carry just in general, trying to kite, trying to dodge skill shots, running around with 3 move speed quints for free, that's so good. And now I haven't even been talking about the ranged versus melee matchups in top lane. Holy, like if you're playing Cannon into melee or Jace into melee, you have 3 move speed quints for free and they don't. It's a free lane basically. You can do so much with this. I know like back in the days when Janna used to give 3% move speed to her entire team with her passive, like having a Janna on your team could swing a top lane matchup because that 3% movement speed allowed a melee to close in on a ranged top laner or a ranged top laner to keep the distance to a melee top laner. And now you're getting 4% for this rune. Like it's so good. 3 move speed quints, running around with that, awesome. Also, the bonus AP or AD, not that great. You're getting, like, after you have your tier 2 boots, you're getting maybe 5 AD or 7 AP, something like that. Not great, not terrible either. So Celerity checks in at number 4. And before we're moving on to top 3, I want to say that so far, from number 10 to number 4, these have been, like, consistently strong or situationally very strong runes that I think are in a good place. Moving to the top 3, these are extremely strong runes that are consistently very strong, and that I think, like I think it would probably be a good idea for Riot to take a look at these 3 runes because they're just super broken at the moment. And first, for number 3, we're going to the precision tree, and we're going to, press the attack. If you're able to land 3 basic attacks, you deal bonus adaptive damage, which is good because you deal attack damage if you're an attack damage champion, and you deal magic damage if you're an AP focused champion. But the second part is the real big thing. That makes them vulnerable for 6 seconds, which increases the damage they take by 12% from all sources. Yep, you heard me right. Not only do you increase your own damage, increase your teammates' damage, but you also get the minions to deal more damage to them. If they're at Baron, if they're taking a monster, they're taking more damage. If they're tanking a tower, they take 12% more damage. So this is just very strong in a lot of champions. It's a default choice on AD carries in general, from what I've seen. Some of them can use like Lethal Tempo or something really well, but almost all AD carries, if you don't know what to go for, press the attack is a good choice. Lucian in particular does really well with this because he can get 3 consecutive basic attacks really easily with the help of his passive, so just auto E auto gives you press the attack proc. Other champions that it synergizes extremely well with are those that can that have spells that counts for these basic attacks. So Shyvana goes auto Q, you proc press the attack. Renekton goes auto W, you proc press the attack. Kled with W ready, bam bam bam, press the attack, etc. The damage isn't great, 30% at level 1 and 120%, 120, sorry, at level 18. It doesn't scale with anything. It's not that high of a number, but the second part is the really big thing. Like, imagine you're playing Renekton top lane, or Kled top lane, you're getting Dove. Just use auto W if you're Renekton or W if you're Kled on whoever's diving you, and they take 12% more damage from the tower. Plus you get a bonus damage. And in team fights, like, I can't even begin to talk about, like, if this increased your damage by 12%, it would be bad, of course. But increasing everyone's damage, it's like the difference between like increasing your own damage only and the entire team, like 5 people, that's so big. I think Pressy Attack is really strong right now. I think it's definitely something you should go for. And that's why it's number 3 on the list. Let's move to number 2, where we're gonna go to the Domination tree. And no, we're not going Electrocute. We're not going Sheep Shot. We're not going whatever this is. Zombie Wards. Number 2 is Zombie Ward on my list. This might sound crazy to you if you're watching this and like you haven't checked out the runes, but Zombie Wards are so good. I can't even begin to describe. Like, we're talking about competitive here, of course. In a normal solo queue game where you haven't coordinated your vision game, Zombie Wards won't be as strong. But in competitive, Zombie Wards are gonna be everywhere. The few competitive games that we've been seeing on 7.22 in the regional leagues in Europe that I've been seeing, there's Zombie Wards in every bush, like they're everywhere. It's so good. So why is it so good? Let's start by reading here that it's 180 seconds, so 3 minutes, and that does not care what type of ward you put down. So you know that ward you put down at level 1, that lasts for 90 seconds, that now lasts for 270 seconds. I'm not going to do math in my video, but that's a very big percentage increase. Like, the difference from having a level 1 ward last 90 seconds and last 270 seconds, I can't even begin to describe like how good that is. You get so much safety early on in your jungle. You have so much potential to spot out the enemy jungler. And sure, if the enemy jungler finds this, he can clean up the zombie ward. But you also spotted the enemy jungler. And that's really, really valuable early on in the game. So what frequently happens is that a jungler in competitive play will recall early for his tracker's knife as soon as it hits 650 gold. And then go for a vision invade, place down 2 wards deep in the enemy jungle. Those wards usually last for 150 seconds. With this, they last for 330 seconds. So more than doubling the amount of time that you have vision on one side of the enemy jungle. Like, this is game-breakingly strong. If not for a certain cat being blatantly overpowered, zombie wards would be number 1 for my list if we're just talking about competitive. Like, it's so good. I cannot wait to see the LCS teams or the LCK teams or the LPL teams show off what they can do with these zombie wards. I've been talking about how strong it is in junglers now, and I think that it's so strong that even if you're on a support, if you're playing a support, going domination secondary just to pick up zombie wards will be worth it. I've been seeing a lot of supports doing it. I think it can be super strong. It's both wards you clear and your own wards that you place. So it's really, really good. Not as strong in solo queue, as I said. Also, if you're playing in a meta where zombie wards are becoming very common, which I think you will, at least if you're playing in the higher MMRs, really making sure to clean out your own jungle from zombie wards will be a really important skill. Like, go through the bushes, knowing when to go through which bushes, just to clean out the zombie wards, will be very important. With that said, with my praise for the zombie ward, we're moving on to number 1. And again, stressing that this is from 7.22, not 7.23. Of course, Summon Aery will be number 1 here. It was honestly just overtuned. Like, with the nerfs, it's probably moved out of the top 3. It probably means Zombie Ward is number 1 in 7.23. But I have not seen enough of Aery. I have not played enough with Aery I need to see more of Aery to judge that, which is why I'm making this about 7.22. And it's just overtuned. It's blatantly overpowered. It's this cute cat that's supposed to be played on like range supports with shields and some mages. And you see like Camille, Pantheon, Narjace, Vlad, Mordekaiser play with Summon Aery. Then you know it's probably overtuned. It's mostly the short cooldown that makes it very strong early on in the laning phase. Kind of falls off when you can't proc it as often, but the damage is really good as well. With the nerfs, as I said, probably move it out of top 3, probably make Zombie Ward number 1. But we'll need to see more of Summon Aery to judge how good it is now. Alright, so with that said, that was my number 10. Please leave a like and a comment if you disagree, if you agree, to let me know what you think. And check me out on Twitter if you want to ask me any questions or follow me there. Thank you very much for watching.